Chuyenjen noi Danglich Sujoanchet, August 9, 1945. Tokyo. Kasumigaseki District, inside the Navy Ministry building. The air is thick with summer humidity and cigarette smoke, and the windows are taped in crisscrossed strips to blunt the shatter of glass when the next raid comes. A junior officer hurries down the corridor in soft-soled shoes, clutching a message folder to his chest like it might stop bullets. The building is already awake, not because Tokyo is safe, but because the night has trained everyone to sleep in fragments. The distant thud of anti-aircraft guns is a familiar heartbeat. Somewhere outside, a siren starts and then cuts off, as if even the alarms are tired. In a conference room lit by a single shaded lamp, Admiral Toyoda Soemu, Chief of the Naval General Staff, stands with his hands clasped behind his back. He is a big man, broad-shouldered, but his posture is controlled, almost rigid, like a steel beam that refuses to bend. On the table sits a map of Kyushu, weighted at the corners by ashtrays and paperweights. Red pencil marks circle ports, airfields, and factories that once mattered. Across from him, Navy Minister Admiral Yonai Mitsumasa looks older than his years. His uniform is immaculate, but his eyes carry a sleepless haze. Near the wall, staff officers hover with notebooks, careful not to breathe too loudly. Everyone in the room knows what happened 3 days ago, even if they still cannot speak the word without feeling the floor tilt. A clerk slides a sheet of paper forward. The header is stamped with urgency. The room tightens. Toyoda reads silently at first. Then his lips move. He stops. Reads again. Slower this time, as if the meaning might change if he forces it to. Another special bomb. One of the staff officers murmurs, unable to help himself. His voice is thin. Yonai does not sit. He reaches for the paper, scans it, and his face drains in a way that no amount of discipline can hide. His fingers tremble once, and then he grips the edge of the table. "Where?" Yonai asks. "Where did it fall?" A communications officer answers, words tumbling out. "Nagasaki." Reports indicate the city has suffered the same phenomenon as Hiroshima. There is no conventional pattern of blast damage. Entire districts are described as flattened and burned simultaneously. Toyoda's eyes lift from the page to the Kyushu map. Nagasaki is a name on paper, a naval port, shipyards, arms works, families, hills. He stares at it like a man who has been told the sea has vanished. A younger admiral, serving as a deputy, tries to latch onto procedure. Is it confirmed? We had confusion after Hiroshima. Some said fuel depot. Some said magnesium. Some said a massive bomb load. The communications officer swallows. Reconnaissance is already underway. But the Army liaison reports intercepted enemy broadcasts describing a second atomic bomb. The Americans claim this one targeted industrial facilities. They name the city. The word atomic hangs in the air, foreign and absolute. In the days since Hiroshima, senior officers had argued over whether the weapon could be repeated, whether it was a single experiment, whether the enemy possessed only one. Men had leaned on hope because hope was lighter than reality. Toyoda's voice is low. So they had another. Yonai's jaw tightens. His gaze flicks to the calendar on the wall, as if he can pin time down. 3 days, he says. 3 days is all it took. A staff officer, his cap held under his arm, speaks carefully. If they can strike twice, they can strike again. Tokyo, Kure, Sasebo, any city, any port. Someone at the far end of the room mutters a curse under his breath. Another officer scribbles on a pad, the pencil scratching loud in the silence. Toyoda turns slightly toward the window. Beyond it, Tokyo's skyline is a patchwork of ruin and stubborn buildings still standing. He has watched firestorms erase neighborhoods. He has read casualty reports that blur into numbers, but this is different. This is not 1,000 aircraft and hours of burning. This is a single flash that makes a city disappear. He returns to the table and taps the map near Nagasaki with a fingertip. Shipbuilding, he says, as if listing inventory. Ordnance. Coal. Transportation. And people. Yoni speaks, and there is iron in the softness. The Americans are not negotiating with bombs. They are demonstrating. A naval intelligence officer offers the only weapon he has. Analysis. Their intention may be to break morale, to force the government to accept unconditional surrender. Toyoda's eyes narrow. Morale is already broken in the streets. What remains is pride in rooms like this. The men exchange quick glances. Pride is a dangerous word in Tokyo now, because it sounds too much like the reason the war continues. Yonai steps closer to the table and places both hands flat on the wood. We have been telling ourselves there is still a way, he says. A decisive battle, an honorable settlement, a condition. But what condition survives a weapon that can erase a city in moments? No one answers. The room is filled with tiny sounds, paper shifting, a distant aircraft engine, a clock ticking like a metronome for the end. Toyoda finally speaks again, slower, each syllable chosen. If this continues, there will be nothing left to govern, nothing left to protect. A messenger appears at the door, bowing quickly, breathless. Admirals, the Supreme Council is convening again. They request naval attendance immediately. Yonai looks at Toyoda. In that glance is a shared understanding, not of strategy, but of a door closing. The war has crossed into a new stage where courage is no longer enough, and sacrifice no longer buys time. Toyoda straightens his cap. Then we go, he says, and as they step into the corridor, the building feels narrower than before, as if Tokyo itself is pressing in, listening for the next report, the next city name, the next flash. In a smaller communications room, a radio receiver crackles with static. A petty officer in headphones twists a dial, chasing a signal that fades in and out like a dying heartbeat. A code clerk stands beside him with a cipher sheet, eyes red, fingers stained with graphite. The message is coming in from Kyushu, routed through a chain of stations that are themselves half crippled by raids and power cuts. The petty officer lifts a hand. Signal stabilized. The clerk begins reading the decoded text, halting at first, then faster as the meaning becomes undeniable. From Naval District Sasebo, time mid-afternoon. Enemy aircraft observed. One B-29 confirmed. Bomb released. Brilliant flash. Shockwave. Fires. Communications lost with Nagasaki. Subsequent reports from surrounding areas indicate complete destruction of Urakami Valley and industrial sections. Estimated casualties severe. Toyoda's face hardens, but his eyes flick once as if he has been struck. Yonai closes his eyes for a fraction of a second, the way a man does when he has to accept a blow without flinching. A staff officer asks the question everyone is thinking. Only one aircraft. The petty officer answers. Voice small. Yes, sir. One. One aircraft. In the old war, one aircraft is a nuisance. A scout. A lone wolf with a few bombs and a death wish. Here, one aircraft is a city. Another clerk enters with a folder stamped from the army. He bows, hands it over, and backs out without speaking, as if words might be contagious. The folder contains a summary from the Home Ministry, compiled from police calls that survived and from survivors who staggered into neighboring towns. It is written in a bureaucratic hand that tries to make catastrophe fit into neat lines. Yonai reads aloud, his voice steady but strained. People burned without flame. Shadows impressed onto walls. Those not instantly killed suffer severe burns. Blistering, vomiting, weakness. Eyewitness reports describe a white light and a rising column of smoke visible from great distance. The room goes quiet. The admirals have seen burned sailors pulled from oil slicks. They have seen men whose skin peeled off with their wet clothing. But this description is something else. It is like the body itself has become the battlefield. Toyota looks to the intelligence officer. The phenomenon is the same as Hiroshima. The officer nods. All indications match. A special bomb of unprecedented yield and radiation effects. The Americans claim it is atomic again. The word again lands like a nail being driven. Again means repeatable. Again means the enemy is not bluffing. Again means the war has slipped beyond the reach of all previous calculations. A young captain, trying to be useful, points to the map with his pencil. Nagasaki's topography. Valleys and hills. If the bomb detonated over Urakami, the blast would channel through the basin, concentrate damage. The shipyards might be partially shielded by terrain. He stops when he sees Yonai's expression. Shielded is not the right word when the reports say people turn to ash. Yonai speaks quietly, almost to himself. Even if a warehouse survives, what of the workers? What of the families? What of the city's ability to exist? Toyota's gaze goes to the list of naval assets on the wall. Ships that cannot sail for lack of fuel. Aircraft with no trained pilots. Coastal batteries that might never see an invasion fleet. The war has been reduced to fragments, and now even the land is being erased. A telephone rings. A staff officer answers, listens, then covers the mouthpiece and turns to the admirals. Reconnaissance update. Sir, a naval aircraft from Omura was dispatched. The pilot reports a massive black and white mushroom cloud, still visible, rising above Nagasaki. Approach impossible due to turbulence and heat. The city beneath appears flattened. Fires everywhere. Toyota asks, any photographs? None yet. Sir, the pilot returned with eyes inflamed and complaints of nausea. He says the air itself felt poisonous. Poisonous air. Yonai's fingers tighten on the edge of the folder until the paper creases. He looks at Toyota with a grim clarity that cuts through rank and ceremony. This is not simply destruction, Yonai says. This is a weapon designed to make the future impossible. Toyota exhales slowly through his nose. And yet the army will still speak of Ketsu-go, of bleeding the enemy on the beaches. The intelligence officer hesitates. Some will. They will argue that the Americans have only a few such bombs. That if we endure, if we inflict heavy losses, they will negotiate. Yonai's eyes sharpen. Negotiate with what? With ashes. The room shifts at that. A few officers glance away, unable to meet his gaze, because they know what the words imply, and they fear the implication more than enemy bombs. Surrender is a word that has lived like a ghost in Tokyo for months, spoken only in whispers, chased away by shouts of honor and sacrifice. Another message arrives. This one is shorter, and for that reason it feels heavier. Nagasaki police station destroyed, medical facilities overwhelmed, survivors requesting water. Many are dying. Railway disrupted. Fires continue. A staff officer says, water, it is the simplest need, the most human. In the Navy, water means boilers, desalination, rationing at sea. Here, water is what a burnt child begs for. Yonai stares at the line on the paper and looks suddenly very tired. Toyota turns to the communications officer. Send to the Supreme Council. Full text. And include the pilot's observation. Yes, sir. The officer moves, but his hands shake. He hides them by gripping the message pad hard, knuckles white. Yonai speaks again. Voice controlled. We must be prepared for what will be said at the council. Toyota nods. We will be asked if the Navy can continue. Yonai gives a thin, almost bitter smile. Can continue. As if the question is about ships and not the nation. They leave the communications room and head deeper into the building, toward the chamber where decisions are made. The hallway feels like a funnel guiding them toward a point of no return. As they walk, Toyoda hears the distant thrum of engines somewhere above the city. Tokyo flinches as a whole, the way a wounded animal flinches at a sudden sound. For a moment, every man in the corridor looks up, as if the ceiling might peel away to reveal the sky and a single silver aircraft. The sound fades. No bombs fall, but the fear stays, because now fear has a name, and the name is atomic. They reach a set of doors guarded by naval police. Inside, the voices of the Supreme Council carry through, tense and sharp. Yonai pauses with his hand on the door frame, then looks at Toyoda. When they ask what happened to Nagasaki, Yonai says, "We must not soften it." Toyoda's answer is a low growl of agreement. No, they must see it as it is, and then they step inside. At the head sits Prime Minister Suzuki Kantaro, an old man with a calm mask that looks almost serene until you notice how his hands rest too still on the tabletop. Nearby is Foreign Minister Togo Shigenori, posture stiff, eyes sharp behind round spectacles. Army Minister Anami Korechika sits like a statue carved from stone, his uniform immaculate, his expression fixed in a hard calm that suggests he has already decided what honor requires. Beside him, a senior staff, including members of the Army General Staff, their faces set, their jaws tight. Yonai and Toyoda take their places. The scrape of chairs is loud. Suzuki speaks first. "We have received reports of another special bomb. We require confirmation and assessment." Toyoda leans forward. His voice carries the blunt weight of the fleet. Confirmed by multiple channels, Nagasaki has suffered destruction consistent with Hiroshima. 1 enemy aircraft, 1 bomb, city districts erased, casualties severe. Reconnaissance pilot reports a column cloud, persistent fires, and air conditions that caused nausea. Anami's eyes narrow. Nausea from smoke, from nerves. Toyoda does not blink. From the environment itself. Army Minister. The pilot described it as poisonous. A faint rustle moves around the table. Men shifting in their seats. Togo's gaze locks on Toyoda, as if he's trying to pull every detail out of him. Togo asks, "Is there any doubt this is the same weapon as Hiroshima?" Naval intelligence answers, "Careful. No meaningful doubt. The effects on human bodies and structures match. Burn patterns, immediate flash, delayed sickness. The Americans have announced it publicly as an atomic bomb. The word atomic lands again, and this time it is in the center of the room, impossible to ignore." Suzuki's mouth tightens. Togo's fingers pressed together. Anami's face remains still. But the vein at his temple pulses. Anami speaks, slow and deep. "The enemy is attempting to frighten us into surrender. A nation does not yield because of terror." Yonai's reply is controlled but carries a sharp edge. It is not terror alone. It is a change in the nature of war. We are not discussing fear. We are discussing the nation's ability to continue existing. Anami turns his head slightly toward Yonai. Existence without honor is not existence. Yonai does not flinch. Honor will not rebuild cities that no longer exist. The air in the room tightens. These are men trained to argue strategy, to cite tonnage and divisions and fuel stocks. Now the argument is about whether a single flash can make all strategy irrelevant. Suzuki looks toward Togo. The Soviets. That word shifts the room in a different way, like a second hammer blow following the first. Because the morning has not brought only Nagasaki. It has brought news from the north. Togo's voice is clipped. The Soviet Union has declared war and begun operations in Manchuria. Our diplomatic channel has failed. There will be no mediation. A few of the army officers stiffen, eyes flicking away. For months they had clung to the hope that Moscow could be used as a bridge to a negotiated peace. Now the bridge is gone, and the river below is full of fire. Toyoda watches an army carefully. The army minister's expression does not crack, but Toyoda can see the calculation behind the eyes, the cold inventory of fronts collapsing, atomic bombs from the air, Soviet armies on the ground, American fleets waiting beyond the horizon. Suzuki's voice lowers. We face annihilation from multiple directions. Anami answers with a soldier's stubborn certainty. Then we must make the decisive battle on the homeland. Ketsugo. We will inflict such casualties that the enemy will accept conditions. Togo's face hardens. Conditions. What conditions survive when they can destroy cities with one aircraft? Anami's gaze is unwavering. If they have only a limited number, we endure. We fight. We show them the cost. Yonai leans forward, and when he speaks, his voice is quiet enough that the room must lean in to hear, which makes the words feel heavier. How many is limited? Yonai asks. 2, 5, 10, 20. Each one is a city. Each one is a port. Each one is 1,000,000 lives. Will you gamble the Emperor's realm on the hope that the enemy runs out first? Silence. A long, dangerous silence. One of the Army General Staff officers clears his throat. Our scientists say the enemy cannot have many. The production of such a bomb must be enormous. It may be a bluff. Toyoda's response is immediate. A bluff does not destroy Hiroshima. A bluff does not destroy Nagasaki. We have already paid the proof in blood. Suzuki looks down at the table, then up again. What does the Navy advise? Toyoda feels every eye on him. This is what he has trained for. To advise in crisis. To speak for the fleet. But the fleet is a shadow now. Ships without fuel, airfields without aircraft, sailors turned into infantry with bamboo spears. The Navy can still die. It cannot still win. He chooses his words with care, because words in this room can end empires. The Navy cannot prevent further atomic attacks. Toyoda says, we cannot stop B-29s from reaching any city they choose. We cannot guarantee protection of the capital. We can prolong the war, but we cannot change its trajectory. Anami's lips tighten. Prolonging the war is not nothing. Yonai turns slightly toward Anami. Prolonging the war under atomic assault is to invite the destruction of the nation we claim to defend. Togo presses his advantage, voice urgent. We must accept the Potsdam terms, with the sole condition of preserving the imperial institution. Anami's eyes flash. Unconditional surrender. Togo corrects him. The terms are the only path. If we delay, we will have no capital, no government, no emperor to protect. Suzuki looks as if he is listening to thunder from far away. We are deadlocked. The council members glance at one another, each man trapped between duty and reality, between a lifetime of doctrine and a world that has changed in 3 days. Toyoda watches the faces and realizes something chilling. This meeting is not about persuading the enemy. It is about persuading themselves. It is about whether they can say a word that has been forbidden for years. Surrender! Outside the room. Faintly. There is the distant sound of aircraft again, or perhaps it is only imagination now. The men at the table do not move, but their eyes shift toward the ceiling as if the sky has become part of every conversation. Suzuki finally speaks. Voice rough. We will take this to His Majesty if we cannot agree. Yonai's gaze drops for a moment, then rises. He understands the weight of that. Bringing this directly to the Emperor means the crisis has passed beyond ordinary politics. It means the state is cracking, and the only thing that might hold it together is the Emperor's voice. Toyoda sits back, hands clasped. His mind returns to the map, to the red circle around Nagasaki, and he feels the cold certainty that there may soon be more circles, more cities, more erased names. In the quiet after Suzuki's words, Anami speaks again. softer now, but no less firm. If we surrender, he says, we betray the dead. Yonai answers, not loudly, but with a hard clarity. If we do not, we will join them and leave nothing for the living. In a side corridor, Yonai and Toyoda stand near a tall window looking out over the damaged city. The afternoon light turns the ruins into a harsh landscape of pale dust and blackened beams. A faint breeze comes through a cracked pane and flutters a loose sheet of paper on the sill. Somewhere far off, a child cries, a sound so ordinary it almost hurts. A junior staff officer approaches, bowing, and hands Toyoda a new note. Toyoda reads it quickly, then passes it to Yonai without a word. More details. Nagasaki's Mitsubishi works gone. Urakami Cathedral leveled. Survivors wandering like ghosts. Clothing burned away. Skin hanging. Eyes unable to focus. Hospitals filled beyond capacity in minutes. Firefighters dead before they can lift a hose. The city's industrial heart, the thing planners could point to and say this supports the war, is a cratered, burning basin. Yonai's breath catches, barely visible. It is as if they have found a way to strike the nation's soul. Toyoda watches him. The Navy minister is not a sentimental man. He has spent his life in negotiation and resistance, maneuvering between factions. For Yonai to speak of a soul means the facts have moved beyond strategy. Behind them, footsteps approach. Another admiral, older, with a lined face and tired eyes, joins them. He lowers his voice. They are still arguing. He says, the army speaks of honor and decisive battle. The foreign minister speaks of the Soviets and the atom bombs. The prime minister looks as if he is trying to hold water in his hands. Toyoda asks, and you, what do you think? The older admiral looks out the window toward Tokyo's scarred streets. I think we have reached the point where courage is no longer the deciding factor. Yonai nods once. Yes. The older admiral's voice drops further. In the fleet, men can accept death if it buys something. Time, a mission, a chance. But this buys only emptiness. Toyoda feels the words settle like lead. He thinks of sailors in the Philippines, diving into burning water to escape strafing. He thinks of the last sorties, the last torpedoes, the last fuel. The Navy has been forced to accept a truth it never wanted. It cannot shape the outcome anymore. Now the atom bomb is finishing what blockade and fire raids began. A messenger from the Imperial Household Ministry appears at the far end of the corridor. Even here, the man seems out of place, like a figure from a different world. He bows deeply, then speaks with rehearsed formality. His Majesty will receive the Prime Minister and select ministers this evening. The words ripple through the corridor. This is the moment Suzuki warned of. A break in the normal chain of command. The Emperor will be asked to speak where generals and admirals cannot agree. Yonai's face tightens, not with fear but with resolve. Then we must ensure His Majesty hears the reality. Toyoda answers, yes. The older admiral hesitates. Will the army accept it? Yonai's eyes harden. They will have to, for a moment. Silence returns. The only sound is the fan turning somewhere, pushing warm air in slow circles. Toyoda glances down the corridor toward another room where naval officers have gathered around a telephone. One of them is speaking rapidly, repeating phrases from Kyushu, asking the same questions again and again, as if the answers might become less terrible with repetition. What did the sky look like? How far did the shock wave travel? How many boats survived in the harbor? How many bodies? The last question hangs unspoken because everyone knows it is too early to count and too late to undo. Yonai steps closer to Toyoda, lowering his voice. When they ask what we should do, we must speak plainly. No more careful phrasing. No more hiding behind probabilities. Toyota nods. The enemy has removed probabilities. Yonai's gaze flicks briefly to the ceiling, as if imagining the great weight of the palace roof and the man beneath it, and the enormity of asking that man to end a war. If we cannot persuade the army, Yonai says, we persuade the emperor. Toyota feels a chill despite the heat. Persuading the emperor is not like persuading a minister. It is to reshape the axis of the nation. A naval aide arrives, breathless, holding a stack of papers. Admirals, the latest technical assessment. The scientists estimate the bomb's yield is immense. The radiation effects are severe. They warn of deaths continuing for days, perhaps weeks. Yonai takes the top sheet and scans it, his lips pressed together. Deaths continuing. Toyota repeats. The aide nods. Yes, sir. They call it sickness. People appear uninjured at first, then collapse. Hair falling out, bleeding, fever. They do not understand it fully. Toyota's hands clench. In naval warfare, wounds are visible. A shell tears flesh. A fire burns skin. A torpedo floods a compartment. But this is an invisible killer that follows you home, that waits in your blood. Yonai folds the paper carefully as if it were a sacred text. Then even those who survived the flash are not truly survivors. Toyota looks toward the window again. The sky over Tokyo is clear today. Clear skies used to mean good flying weather for the enemy. Now clear skies mean something worse. They mean a single aircraft could arrive, unchallenged, and the city could be transformed into a place where the air itself kills. Down the corridor, the older admiral speaks again, voice rough. What did they say when they learned of Nagasaki? Toyota answers without looking at him. At first, disbelief. Then silence. Then the same question repeated in different forms. What else can they do? How many more? What will be left? Can we still call this war? Yonai's voice is quieter than the others. But it carries... When I read it, the only thought I had was this. If they can do this twice, they can do it until the islands are empty. The older admiral swallows. His Adam's apple bobbing is the only visible sign of emotion. Toyota turns fully toward Yonai. Then we must end it. Yonai holds Toyota's gaze. Yes, they do not shake hands. They do not need to. They are sailors, and decisions are sometimes made with only a look. A bell sounds somewhere deeper in the building, a signal that another meeting is being called. Officers begin moving again. The machine of government grinds forward, even as the ground beneath it cracks, as they walk back toward the council chamber. Toyota feels the burden of the phrase they will have to say. Not tactics, not operations, not even defeat. Surrender. And he realizes that the most dangerous battlefield now is not a beach on Kyushu. It is a room where men must choose between honor, as they have defined it, and survival, as the nation will need it. Inside, the air is cooler. The corridors are polished, quiet, and almost unreal compared to the ruined city outside. A hush follows the men as they walk, as if the building itself demands silence. Prime Minister Suzuki, Foreign Minister Togo, Army Minister Anami, Navy Minister Yonai, and senior military leaders assemble in a waiting room. The mood is taut. No one speaks above a low murmur. Each man knows that whatever happens in the next hour will become history, and perhaps condemnation. Toyota stands slightly behind Yonai, present as the Navy's voice and conscience. He can hear the soft rustle of papers, the faint click of a watch lid, the measured breathing of men who have practiced calm under fire and now find calm difficult. A chamberlain appears and announces in a formal tone that His Majesty will receive them. They enter. The room is sparse, arranged with deliberate simplicity. The emperor sits with a composed stillness that makes the generals and admirals look like restless figures in comparison. Toyoda does not look directly at him for long. Tradition and reverence guide every movement. But even in the brief glimpse, Toyoda sees something new. Not weakness, not fear, a deep attentiveness, as if the emperor has already been listening to the nation's suffering through walls and distance. Suzuki bows, then speaks, voice respectful but strained. He outlines the situation, the enemy's demands, the Soviet entry into the war, the devastation of Hiroshima, and now Nagasaki, the deadlock among the leaders. As the Prime Minister speaks, Toyoda watches an army. The army minister's face is controlled, but his hands are clenched at his sides. He's a man who has never allowed himself to imagine surrender. And now he stands in front of the emperor with that possibility tearing at him from within. Togo speaks next, emphasizing diplomacy, the collapse of mediation, and the risk of Soviet occupation. He chooses his words like a surgeon, precise, urgent. He does not need to dramatize Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because the very mention of them has become a kind of wound in the room. Then Yonai is invited to speak. The Navy Minister steps forward, bowing, and his voice is quiet at first, as if he is speaking into a vast space. Your Majesty, Yonai says, we face a weapon unlike anything in human experience. One aircraft can destroy a city. We cannot defend against it. We cannot promise protection of the capital. If the war continues, our cities will be erased one by one, and the people will perish not only in battle but afterward, from sickness that our doctors do not understand. Toyoda's throat tightens. He has heard Yonai speak many times in cabinet sessions and briefings, but never like this. There is no political maneuvering in the words, only the naked truth. Anami bows and asks to speak. His voice is steady, almost gentle, which makes it more frightening. Your Majesty, Anami says, the enemy seeks to destroy our spirit if we accept the enemy's demands. We abandon the sacrifices of those who have died believing in victory. We still have the means to fight. We can inflict heavy losses in the decisive battle. We can compel a peace with conditions. Toyoda feels the tension tighten in the room as if someone has pulled a cord. Everyone understands that Anami's position is not merely strategic. It is moral, spiritual, and bound to the army's identity. Silence follows. The emperor listens. His gaze moves from one speaker to the next. Not hurried, not distracted. The room is so quiet, Toyoda can hear the faint movement of fabric as men breathe. Then, at last, the emperor speaks. His voice is soft, but it carries. It does not command by volume. It commands by the fact that it exists. Toyoda does not remember every word later. What he remembers is the feeling, the shift, like a door opening. The emperor speaks of the suffering of the people, of the danger of national extinction, of the need to endure the unendurable. He acknowledges the new weapon and the widening war. And then, with painful clarity, he indicates that peace must be sought. For a moment, Toyoda feels the room tilt. It is as if gravity has changed direction. The decision is not unanimous. It is not clean. It is not a proud victory. But it is final, because it has come from the one voice that can cut through the deadlock. Yonai bows deeply. His shoulders tremble once, perhaps from relief, perhaps from the knowledge of what comes next. Anami bows too, but his body is rigid. His face remains composed. Yet Toyoda senses a fracture within him. To obey the emperor is the army's creed. To accept surrender feels to many like betrayal. Both truths are now forced into the same space. Suzuki speaks again, voice hoarse. We will proceed. The meeting ends with formal bows, but the men leave as if walking out of a funeral. Outside the palace room, in the corridor, Toyoda exhales and realizes he has been holding his breath. Yonai moves beside him, expression unreadable. It is decided, Yonai says. Toyota nods. Yes, but even with the Emperor's decision, Toyota knows the danger is not over. The military is not a single mind. There are officers who will refuse to accept this. There are men who will see surrender as mutiny against the dead. There are men with weapons and desperation and a sense of purity that could ignite into violence. In the palace corridors, whispers already begin. Orders will need to be issued, messages drafted, the terms of acceptance weighed and phrased. Even now, words are life or death. Toyota pauses near a window that looks out into the darkness. Tokyo is a shadowed sea of rubble, dotted with small lights like dying stars. Somewhere far away, a train whistle sounds, thin and lonely. He thinks of Nagasaki, of the valley filled with smoke, of the poisoned air, of people calling for water. And he thinks of the admirals back at the ministry, the ones who asked what could be left. He has the answer now. What can be left is whatever survives if the war stops. But stopping it will require more than the Emperor's voice. It will require the military to obey. It will require the nation to accept the unbearable truth that the war has ended in defeat. And in the darkness beyond the palace, Toyota senses the coming storm, not from enemy bombers, but from within Japan itself. Back at the Navy Ministry, Yonai sits under a dim lamp, drafting language with a precision that feels like defusing a bomb. Toyota stands near the wall, watching the minister's pen move, the ink dark against the paper. Every phrase will be weighed by men who still want to fight. Every sentence must be strong enough to hold the army in place without shattering what remains of unity. A naval officer enters with a fresh report from Kyushu. Nagasaki still burns. Fires crawl through collapsed streets. The dead are not being counted, only pushed aside when someone has the strength. The officer speaks quickly, voice tight. Survivors continue to arrive in Omura and Isahaya. Many collapse after walking only a short distance. Doctors report internal bleeding. They have no medicine for it. Toyota feels his jaw clench. The war now kills people after the explosion, after the flames, after the obvious wounds. It kills in silence, in bodies that fail with no visible reason. He thinks of sailors he has sent into battle with a chance, however small. These civilians were given no chance at all. Yonai looks up from the paper, eyes hollow. This is what we must stop. Toyota nods. Yes. A telephone rings. A staff officer answers, listens, then turns pale. He covers the mouthpiece and whispers to Yonai, the army. There is unrest. Some officers are saying the Emperor is being misled. They want to prevent acceptance of surrender. The words hit Toyota like a physical blow. He has expected resistance, but hearing it spoken makes it real. He imagines young officers with swords at their sides, eyes bright with zeal, convinced that purity can reverse physics. Yonai's expression hardens. Where? Various units. Rumors around the war ministry. Some talk of seizing key buildings. Toyota steps forward. Then the danger is here. Tonight, Yonai sets down his pen and stands. For a moment, the older man looks like the naval officer he once was, decisive and unsentimental. We will not allow it. Toyota feels a cold focus settle in. This is no longer a battle against America. It is a battle against chaos, against a faction that would rather see the nation burn than admit defeat. In the early hours, meetings are held behind closed doors. Naval police receive instructions to reinforce entrances, to control corridors, to keep weapons out of certain rooms. Couriers are sent with sealed orders, their bicycles rattling over broken streets, slipping through darkness as if carrying the nation's heartbeat in their satchels. Toyota is called into a small room where senior naval officers gather around a radio. The voices from the army side are tense, clipped, full of coded language. He can hear the strain of a system trying to hold itself together. A naval captain mutters, "If they move against the palace." Toyota answers, "Then the war will end in civil blood." Silence follows. No one wants to imagine it, but the possibility is there, sharp as a knife. In the palace, preparations begin for the Imperial Rescript, the recorded message that will be broadcast to the nation. The idea is simple and terrifying. If the Emperor's voice reaches the people, the war is over. If the message is destroyed, delayed, or suppressed, the country could plunge into madness. Toyota is not in the palace when the recording is made, but he hears of it through naval channels. The Emperor speaks slowly, with a gravity that makes every syllable feel like it carries centuries. Technicians handle the recording discs with hands that tremble. Guards stand at the doors with rifles, their faces pale in the lamplight. Back at the Navy Ministry, Yonai receives word that extremists may attempt to seize the recording. The Navy's response is immediate. Naval security coordinates with loyal elements of the Imperial Guard. Orders are given in short, hard phrases. Protect the palace. Protect the message. Protect the future. Toyota steps into the corridor and sees young naval police with rifles. Their faces tense but determined. They are not going to see. They are defending a building with paper and voices inside it. For the first time, Toyota understands that the final defense of Japan is not a coastline. It is a sentence. A messenger arrives, breathless, reporting movement around the War Ministry. Army officers gathering in groups, vehicles starting, men speaking in urgent tones. Tokyo's darkness is full of footsteps. Yonai looks at Toyota. "If they come here, we hold." Toyota's reply is immediate. "We hold." Hours drag. The night feels endless. Every distant shout makes men grip their rifles tighter. Every engine sound makes heads turn. And then, slowly, the storm breaks without consuming everything. The most dangerous faction moves, but not with enough force. Loyal officers counter them. Confusion spreads among the would-be rebels. Orders are questioned. Some hesitate. Some obey the Emperor even as their hearts scream. Toyota hears fragments as they come in. A clash in a corridor. A confrontation at a gate. A shouted command. A refusal. And then, at last, a simple message arrives that makes Toyota's knees feel weak with relief. The recording is secure. Yonai closes his eyes for a moment and lets out a breath. No triumph. Only exhaustion. Morning comes. August 15th will be the day the nation hears the Emperor's voice. But even on August 10th, the direction is set. The admirals who learned Nagasaki was gone now understand what their words meant in the council and in the palace. They were not only describing destruction, they were choosing whether there would be anyone left to listen. Toyota walks outside briefly into the morning air. The sky over Tokyo is pale blue, deceptively calm. He looks up and thinks of the single aircraft over Hiroshima, the single aircraft over Nagasaki, and how small they were compared to what they did. Behind him, inside the ministry, men are still working, still drafting, still sending orders. The machine of surrender is slow and fragile, but it is moving. Toyota turns back toward the building. The war will end not with a final battle, but with a broadcast, with obedience, with the survival of a voice. And in that, the admirals have finally said what they never imagined they would say. Enough.